Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in today. I am Dylan Bohbot, and today we are interviewing the very esteemed, very amazing Dr. Meredith Snow from the University of Montana. Dr. Snow, it has been a long time. How are you doing?
It has been a hot minute, man. I'm doing well. It's really good to see you.
Yeah,
It feels like it's been ages. But yeah, no, definitely. Doing pretty well. Semester's over, hanging in there now, and just gearing up for some summer research. Honestly, so
yeah. I mean, what is that pressure like when you're done with the semester and all the students are gone? You're just like, I can finally relax, right?
yeah, no, definitely. It's kind of like, oh my god, I can actually breathe. Like there's air. Yeah, it was quite the end of the semester this last time, especially. We've been in doing a job search, and that was a lot. And yeah, so I'm really grateful. It's like wound down to a point now. I think I have one defense for a student this afternoon, but it's all good. So
It was a job search for somebody on your staff at the university?
yeah, so actually we were hiring another tenure track person. So we had a retirement this last year. So I don't know, I think you probably took some classes from Dr. Randy Skelton.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, he actually retired
Okay.
as
Good
of
for him.
literally a week ago today. So we were trying to find another person to kind of not necessarily take his place, obviously, but to come in and to help out with the program and all that sort of good stuff. So
Hmm.
it was a lot of weird work. I've never actually sat on a tenure track position committee like that before, like as the main person, as the chair of it, and like I was like, oh god, there's a lot of paperwork. So
Yeah, of course. But speaking of the University of Montana, which best educational institute in America, um, tell us a little bit about some. Tell us about the Paquimé research because I remember when I was your student,
yeah.
I was working on some of those samples. So please, first question I want to ask though is what makes it a UNESCO World Heritage Site? How does that process work? And then what is the research that you specifically do and how did you get involved?
Oh god, yeah, no, totally. Okay, so UNESCO has like a list of criteria. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know like all of the details because I wasn't involved necessarily with that part. It happened a long time ago. But that they have to be culturally relevant and widely recognized as important, and a variety of other characteristics that then UNESCO is basically like this is a place that we need to protect. And so it's a designation that we see around the world with a lot of different places, and makes Paquimé kind of special. But I would have told you that anyhow because it's a pretty cool spot. And yeah, definitely, you were helping me out with a variety of things. Everything from getting like samples ready to go back, and I know some mapping and some other crazy stuff while and yeah, no, it's amazing location. So, it is a city basically that dates from about 1100 to 1450 AD, and is going to be situated in the desert. Actually, it's about 3 hours south of El Paso, or 3 hours north of Chihuahua City. It's like right smack dab in the middle there, and it is a huge expanse. It's only been about 60% excavated thereabouts. But what we can see is just like the remnants of this huge city where individuals lived. We don't know how many, but it's very large, and has like three-story apartment buildings and a lot of really cool, interesting things. I got interested in grad school, and actually tried to do some work down there at that point in time. But then once I got done, that was one of my first places that I really wanted to be able to go back to because, like, I was really interested in the people that lived there, and particularly because they kind of sit in this halfway point between like the US Southwest and then also into Mesoamerica. And I really wanted to know a little bit more about like what that experience was like. We know from the architecture and the pottery and a whole bunch of other stuff that these individuals like had cultural elements from both sides. They had like macaws from down into Mesoamerica, and then they also have like a similar architecture to some of the places that we see like at Chaco Canyon and other things like that. And I was like, okay, well, what was this location, and how are these individuals related to the Southwest and then also into Mesoamerica, and seeing if there was migration or gene flow between those areas. There's been like these long standing debates that people were like, oh, when Paquimé became a city, basically, when it underwent fluorescence to a larger site from a tiny village, right? That there was individuals that moved into the area, and people thought that, oh, they came from the north, they came from the south. That question was really interesting to me, and I wanted to see in that larger cultural context if we could maybe establish some of that information, which I feel like we kind of have, which is pretty cool. So
What do you think is the conclusion of that?
we think actually that most individuals were really local, that it was an aggregation of individuals from there, as well as a period in time when there was probably a lot more food, the weather and agriculture was very beneficial, and they did great. And therefore, what we see is basically a larger population aggregation that was entirely going to be the product of those individuals that were living there, and wasn't necessarily an outside influence that came and caused them to like suddenly build a city or something like that. It was actually their own impetus, which I think is kind of important. We think we like to like attribute a lot of big things that happen in any culture to like some outside force. Oh, the Romans came in and they did all this stuff, right? And like we that's just a random example. But we tend to do that a lot with human culture, and attribute large changes to outside forces. And the reality is that it's not always that way. And that individuals can do that on their own and make these amazing places without necessarily having like an influx of individuals from outside.
Yeah, I see that often. Like people like to romanticize these, not just in America, but around the world. Oh, there was nothing here. It was just a few villages. And it's like, if you go to, I don't know, like Morocco, for
Mhm.
example, people, it's like, oh, it was nothing before the Arabs came. It's like, no, that's not true at all. The Berber people who still live there had these incredible cities and ports, and they had these mountain villages and everything that are still in use today.
Mhm.
So it's just an example of, I think it's sort of a, not necessarily Western, but like a romanticized version, like the Plains Indians of America, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the lifestyle that they lived, we want to go live that way. It's like they had a very like rigid life. It wasn't all
Yeah. They
a
had a
fairy
very
tale.
complex life too, and it was
Yeah,
not like not something that, you're just gonna drop into and have it be all like peace, love, and happiness. It was, they
exactly.
had their own way of going about things. It was complicated and difficult in certain elements. And
So I know you're doing a lot of genetic work. I want to get to that a little bit later. But speaking about this group of people that lived at the Paquimé site, so they lived before European contact, right? So 1450.
yeah,
W-
absolutely. So actually, when the first records that we have of the Spaniards, a couple of them getting up into that area, they actually saw the ruins and were like, "Wow, that's kind of amazing." It was, I mean, clearly a large occupation city area, and they were asking about it, and the individuals that were living there at that time said that oh, they had all died off or gone away at that point in time. So yeah, it was already a ruin when the Spaniards got there. So this is definitely pre-contact or pre-Columbian.
What year was that when the Spanish first saw it?
So the Spanish get into, um, central Mexico right around 1500s, early 1500s.
Yeah. Is that with
Um,
Cabeza de Vaca?
yeah, I'm trying to remember his name when he get who the person was, but one of them is going up. I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't. Um, and yeah, he gets up into this area, and keeps pretty good records. It's actually really interesting to read how he is looking around and seeing all these different gosh, cultures that are living there, people, etc. But yeah, he's basically doing an exploratory party out from the conquistadors who are going to be
Mhm.
in the more central Mexico City area.
How do we think that this town and this city was built from a small settlement and village? Was it, what type of infrastructure did they have, and was it all due to agriculture? And how many people do you think lived there at its height?
Yeah, we don't really know how many people at its height. There's definitely a lot of debate about this. And actually, if you look across like a lot of the ancestral Puebloan populations and things like that, if you go further north, where we see a lot of the same architecture, there's debates. But I will say, it's definitely, mm, yeah, more than just like a couple hundred individuals. It was probably a pretty sizable settlement. And just based on the number of burials that we found, which are in the 600s range, for the part of the site that has been excavated, we definitely know is pretty big population. And they also, were on a pretty amazingly productive part of the landscape. If you go and drive through this area today, it looks really deserty. Like, how does people live here, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's
I've
not
been through El
exactly.
Paso. It's
Yeah.
sadness.
It's not exactly green and lush, right? Like, how are you surviving? How are you making enough food to be able to like feed hundreds of people, right? If not thousands. Well, they have a river that goes through there. It doesn't look like much today, but at the time, it actually had a pretty nice floodplain. So what they were able to do is to plant corn and other foods, chilies, beans, and etc. to make life go there. They also raised turkeys. We also know that they raised macaws. Um, so they were able to, not for eating, by the way, because we're not food as
No,
far
they
as we
they
know,
look
but
pretty bony.
yeah, I can't imagine that they'd be very tasty. They did like their feathers though, which I can understand. They're beautiful. Um, but yeah, um this area though, it has some very agriculturally sustainable areas. So from that, we probably see large numbers of individuals then congregating there, if not, having then more babies and things like that, just in general. But they built the city, and it was quite intricate. I mean, they had a like water system that went through the city, so we can see actually like canals, and then also um maybe not like indoor plumbing, but like basically you're going to see like wells and things like that that actually then had channels of water that ran through the site. So these individuals were quite ingenious in how they were managing a slightly more scarce resource of water, but then also able to kind of harness that in another way to be able to grow a lot of food. So uh, definitely complex systems that they brought together to be able to build this really amazing location. And I'm not sure if I'm answering your question now. So,
No, no, it's all fascinating. I love this. It's very interesting, and I'm sure that the audience and whoever else is listening would, you know, it's nice to know that there was so many different societies that took the same game plan and they're like, okay, this works. The floodplain, whether it's in Iraq, whether it's in China, whether it's in Central America. I don't know if you've read this book. I might have told you about this book when I was back at UM, but I had a professor by the name of Danielle Bolelli, and
mhm.
he recommended this book that we had to read for his course. It was called American Holocaust. Now it goes through like
Uh,
all of the atrocities that the natives went through throughout North, Central, and South America. But one thing that he talks about, and actually it's interesting because it relates in a way to Paquimé, is that there were illustrations from the Spanish of
mm.
I forgot, was it Tenochtitlan that they built Mexico City on top of?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it shows like all the different canals and like it was like Venice, how they built these farming, like these agricultural islands. People would take canoes from island to island. And then there were the illustrations of all the temples and the homes and how everything, and it was so intricate and so interesting. And it's very, very cool and unique to see that, oh, these people that people thought were just like primitive and backwards and barefoot, what they were able to create.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much weird westernized like perspective on populations in the new world where everybody was like, "Oh, they're so
They
basic."
all lived in teepees.
Yeah, something like that, and I'm like, "God, no." That I mean, sure, some individuals did, but the reality is that, like, their societies were just as complex as anywhere else, and, their subsistence manner was also just as complicated as a lot of other places today, and, like, yeah, no, definitely. I know there's, like, some quote that was like, "Oh, when you got into Mexico City, they're like, it was bigger than Venice, it was more complicated," and it was truly beautiful and amazing, and we kinda all got really, messed up. That's not the right word, but you know what I mean,
Yeah.
in
You could
terms
say
of
whatever you want on this show, by the way.
it
There's
got
no
really fucked
censorship.
by smallpox, let me put it that way, and yeah, no, I think that goes back to the book you were referencing, like, the
Yeah.
Holocaust of basically just, like, estimates of, like, upwards of 90% of the population died,
Yeah.
and when, the conquistadors get into Mexico City, the amount of unrest that was going on already because of smallpox having basically taken out parts of the royal family. And it happens in Peru also, where, people get down there and like, yeah, it was horrific. And I think a lot of the views that we might have of a lot of like the American populations in North, Central, and South are so skewed because we don't get there in terms of Western society and have records of some of the things until after the aftermath of like losing huge portions of your population.
Yeah, what is it like 100 like what is the estimate like 100 to 200 million people across the both continents died?
Yeah, yeah,
Some
upwards
crazy
of, yeah,
number.
crazy numbers.
Yeah.
90% of your population. I can't even like fathom that. Um it just is like truly horrific to
A
think
third of
about.
the United States basically
Yeah,
just
yeah,
turning into
absolutely.
dust.
Just gone.
Yeah.
And totally, and taking a lot of that knowledge and culture with them. Um in the process, I mean, definitely most of it was saved with individuals who are still around, it didn't disappear. I think that's the other thing to kind of keep in mind. A lot of people are like, "Oh, well, it just got lost." No, there's a lot of it's still around. Um, just go talk to your friendly local Native American. They'll tell you. But
Yeah. They still exist, everyone.
yeah, exactly. They're still around. Still do a lot of cool shit. I've been
Mhm.
really lucky to work with some of them. And yeah, I think that it
Good.
just was a massive shift in things at that point just because of pandemics. I mean, which had huge influence a lot of other places too. Don't get me wrong, like the
Yeah, the
Black Death
bubonic
certainly did.
plague.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, right? Yeah, it's disease is messed with us as a species for quite some time. It continues to do so today. Huh.
of course.
Um, but yeah, I think that a lot of the also the romanticized simplicity that people big air quotes around simplicity of a population in the new world was so wrong.
Yeah. And also I think it's an issue, like, especially amongst, like, first generation Americans like myself, like, people have a romanticized view of, like, our family's life.
Mm,
It's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go live in the mountains of the country my parents come from," and, like, in Lebanon or something, and go raise olives. It's like, do you not understand how difficult life is over there? It's not a walk in the park. It's not 150 years ago.
yeah,
Like, the world has changed. The lines in the sand have moved. Everything is different now.
yeah,
Unless you literally go live in the most remote place in the world,
yeah,
you're going to have to mold to the society that you live in now that has modern technology and governments and so on. But
absolutely.
that actually leads me to, in the discussion we were just having, um, the people of Paquimé, who are their closest living descendants? And then I want to get onto some stuff about genetics in the Native American community. But if we could go over that real quick.
Yeah, no, definitely. So that's actually been another really big question is, when we start to see written records from the Spaniards, which doesn't mean that there weren't records like oral history and things like that of populations prior. It's just that we don't have those, unfortunately. Um, they basically state that the individuals that were living in that area didn't really know who the individuals that lived at Paquimé were. Where do they go? What happened to them? That's been something that's been debated quite a bit. There was an article that was put out god, was that in 2023? I think. Do you remember John Douglas? I don't know if you ever took any classes from him.
I maybe I don't recall.
Yeah, it's all good. Anyhow, he's another professor at UM. He actually wrote this really interesting article, like going back to some of the records and a lot of other information that he could piece together to try to figure out, do we have any leads on who these individuals became today, right? They're still around. Like there's got to be some people left, obviously. They just moved. Um for whatever reason. That's a whole other debate. But he was saying that there's actually potentially some tribes in that area that still exist today, like the Suma, who might actually be related to the Paquimé individuals that lived there in the past. That has not been genetically substantiated. We don't know. Um, but we definitely see a lot of information that suggests that that's who potentially today is going to be the descendants of the Paquimé occupants.
Very
Um,
interesting.
yeah, it's really difficult to say, and definitely something that I would love to do some more work on, to be able to see if that's, something that we could tie back, and then also, talk to these individuals. I will note though that also kind of the interesting part about working in Mexico is that almost everybody, with very rare exceptions, has some Native American ancestry. So even the
It's
people that
very
are living
different than
next,
from here.
yes, it's so different. It's a vastly different world. That I don't think a lot of people understand. Like when I work in Mexico and I'm, working with the people that work at the museum, or I'm talking to like the local, gosh, local Rotary Club, right? Everybody there has Native American ancestry, and it's probably from at some point someone who was related to a Paquimé. So yeah, like that is just vastly distinct, and they have very specific, rules, regulations, laws on how to work with their ancestors because they
Mhm,
all recognize these individuals as their ancestors. So while there are still, more tribal entities in Mexico that live in a lifestyle or in a group that is going to identify as a specific tribe, everybody else also has that ancestry too. And so it's something that definitely makes things a little bit different from here. Whereas like when I, work at a particular archaeological site here and we come across human remains, you have to kind of like trace back to a recognized tribal entity that's its own sovereign nation and we view as kind of distinct. That's not the case in Mexico. It's very much like, oh, these individuals, everybody here is related to this person.
yeah.
So,
It's weird because, like, I live in New York, and we have the entire world lives here. And it's very obvious, when you get on the subway or you walk by people, it's like there's a very obvious indigenous Central and South American look. It's like the dark skin, the high bridge nose, high cheekbones, the really thick black dark straight hair, and they're not very tall. And it's like a very obvious look. And like you'll talk to anyone in America and they're like, "Oh, that's just like a Mexican." And it's like, well, it depends. It's like this guy might be from Guatemala or from Uruguay or Chile. There's a very unique look. And I think that's a beautiful thing that we're kind of not sheltered from, but like avoidant of in general. People
mhm.
don't want to talk about like the uniqueness of how certain people or certain groups look because
Yeah.
that could be like offensive now for people. It's like no, it's very unique. People adapted over tens of thousands of years to the environment they lived in. Just because we invented planes 100 years ago doesn't mean that everything changes.
Right, yeah, it doesn't make us better either for that matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I definitely hear you, and I think that, the beauty of human variation, right? Is something that we are like, "Oh, no, like, don't look at that." I'm like, "No, we should celebrate it," right? Like, there's some amazing things here, and, like, we shouldn't be spending so much time, like, trying to, like, make all these lumping weird categories that, like, don't make any sense and just, like, celebrate our ancestry, um, if we're whatever it might be.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And so I was reading about some work that you were doing and that you had a one or a couple students of the Blackfeet tribe that doing work with you, and you can't exactly do genetic testing because you have to speak with the tribe and some other complications. Can you explain that a little bit more, please?
Oh yeah. So I have been really lucky to work with Haleo Miso, is one of my doctoral students. She is just almost done with her degree. She actually walked in the graduation ceremony last weekend. Um finishing up the rest of her research and things like that for her doctorate. And she is a member of the Blackfeet, who are a group here, a tribe that lives up in northern Montana, like on the outside of Glacier National Park, and actually then across the border, and there's going to be the rest of the tribe that actually lives in Canada. So I've been really lucky to have the opportunity to work with her because she kind of came in and wanted to find a way to help with her tribe's missing and murdered Indigenous persons or MMIP issues, as well as potentially then some she calls it rematriation, which I think is super fun. It's a great way to put it. But basically, the returning of individuals who were excavated or found or placed in museums. There's a bunch of them around of these individuals that we think might be Blackfeet, and she wants to be able to return them to the tribe.
Hmm.
So she's been doing just so much work and so much amazing work with this particular undertaking, because a lot of tribes don't particularly view genetic work favorably. There's been uh, just horrific abuses of Native American DNA
That
over the years.
quantum blood thing,
Oh,
right?
yeah. That's just like the tip of the iceberg too. Like the blood quantum, like, oh, you have to be this much ancestry to belong to the tribe. Like, God, that it sorry. Eugenics. Anyhow, but yeah. Sorry, that's a topic in one of my classes that Dylan took with
I
me.
have to bring that up again in a later in the show, so please remind me in case I don't bring that back up.
Okay, I'll definitely bring that back up. Oh my gosh. But yeah. Anyhow, so yeah, there's like a variety of other horrific things that have been done with Native American DNA that makes them very wary of it. Yeah, so Haley's doing this really interesting thing where she's actually building like a tribally owned genetic database to allow for them to be able to like own and control their own DNA, which totally makes sense. As I said, sovereign nation, they should have control over their DNA and be able to do it with it what they want and what would be the most effective for their purposes, their interest, which is how she's been framing it, is to be able to locate individuals and to be able to run DNA comparisons for when somebody goes missing or when you're trying to reassociate remains back with a specific tribe. So she's been doing this really cool stuff, and she started what's known as Okomi Forensics, which is a group or a nonprofit that actually basically focuses on forensic work, not just for the Blackfeet, but she's actually also been reaching out to other tribes and other groups that allow for basically help when things go the worst possible way with an MMIP thing.
Okay.
Um, and have somebody missing, can't find them, you need help, and you may not be getting it necessarily from local law enforcement or federally, because a lot of the tribes, once you get into like a murder case, that goes to the federal level, and well, it's just not as much help as might be necessary. So she's been doing like trainings and things like that. Actually, next week she's got a whole day meeting for tribal entities that want to come to UM, and then we're going to do like workshops on like what do you do to go look for a missing person, right? Like how do you do that? How do you identify bones? Like that sort of thing. It's a difficult situation, where, as an outsider, I don't want to be telling people what to do with their DNA or how to go about doing some of these different things, and it's hard, and there's a lot of underlying angst and frustration on the part of the communities, from mistreatment over the years, and this is just one way that Haley came up with that, I've been lucky enough to help with, to try to find a way where the tribal needs can be met and they can also maintain their sovereignty.
No, I think that's a really genius idea to be giving the tribes their sort of own autonomy when it
Mhm.
comes to that. Because listen, you shouldn't leave anything in the hands of the government. They'll find a way to ruin it. But generally speaking, generally speaking, but I think it's a good idea. I think it's a really great idea, allow people to be able to do the research themselves and then be able to reach out, "Hey, we need help. We think we know who this person is. If you need double checking, whatever." Because I understand people can be a little bit paranoid, like with the whole 23andMe thing. Like, it is very cool to know where your background is, but people are like, "The government got my DNA.
Mm.
I don't know what to do." It's like, they're not going to clone you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stop it. Stop. I talked to George Church last week. They are not gonna
Oh
bring
my god.
human beings back from spit samples at 23andMe. You're fine.
Right,
You'll be
right.
okay. Yeah, people
That's
get really
awesome.
weird.
Also very cool to talk to George Church. Dang.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
But definitely I can understand why some people might be reticent to submit their DNA. And I think this is a nice way that it can potentially kind of circumvent some of those issues by making sure that the tribes maintain their own autonomy. So,
Mhm. And so speaking of, this reminds me of sort of that eugenics thing I wanted to
mm,
touch up just a little bit on. Just a little bit on. It is so weird. The social media has become just a cesspool. The second you open it, the first thing you're gonna get is like the most bizarre conspiracy theories. Of course, these people aren't really these people. The genetics are fake. They all disappeared. Okay, it's
oh
like,
god.
calm down. I think you know what group of people I'm referring to.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, I'm like, yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of them actually.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I come across a lot
Yeah.
of weird shit.
Yeah, a lot of weird fake conspiracies, and it's like, I exist, I'm right here. I we haven't disappeared. Where did you think we all went?
Oh
The
my god.
stories of the Bible started somewhere. We didn't just disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite ones.
Oh my god.
Yeah, or
That's
that like
insane. Yeah.
yeah, or like the whole thing, it's like you can even talk like geopolitics, like India, Pakistan. It's like this was literally the same place until like 80 years ago. They're not genetically different people. Like the internet is a blessing and a curse.
Mhm.
Where you have crazy people that are just on there like perpetual. I don't know if they're getting paid, but it's like it bothers me when you see like I don't want to be one of those people that's like just let the experts talk about it. But in terms of like genetics or anthropology, biology, it's like maybe there should be people that are educated or do this type of work that can come on and say, hey, this is not accurate. You know, it's like flat earth, things like that.
Yes, no, I totally hear you.
Yeah.
And I know that there's, a big push lately. I was actually at a conference a couple weeks ago in Denver and attended a couple of talks on like how to be a better like social media outreach with like real science, right? To like debunk these crazy weird things. But yeah, like I think that people just like get really into these weird ideas and then like make shit up. I don't know. And yeah, so I think there has been a lot of push lately to really be better science communicators. I do have another student, Danielle, who I'm gonna plug her right now. She has a
Shout out Danielle
to Danielle, yeah,
and
she's got
Haley.
a
Great job.
YouTube.
Tremendous. You guys are doing it.
Yeah, considering skeletons is her YouTube channel. And it's actually quite fun. She does a lot of stuff with like different weird theories, but also super fun stories from history and just kind of like yeah. So and she also does some really fun research in Poland. So
What's she researching in Poland?
we've been looking at particularly disease. So we've been doing some sequencing to help better understand why this one cemetery has like these interesting lesions like on the inside of the brain on individuals who died. Or
When
not
is
the
this
inside of the
from?
brain, like the inside of the crania where the brain would be. Um
Okay.
so like yeah.
Visible on the bone?
Yeah, on the bone. It's a really
Interesting.
interesting
Like
and
blight for potatoes, but on Polish people.
it, it's a little like, ooh, that looked like it might have been painful.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a bunch of different diseases that will do that, right? And so we've been kind of trying to pinpoint that. And it was a Polish researcher who obviously like did the initial osteological analysis, so looked at the bones, and then was like, huh, this is interesting. And then we got in touch with them, and now we've been looking for these signatures of what potentially is causing that, and that's what Danielle works on. And then she does a lot of the science communication stuff. She's been really into that recently, which I just love watching her like do these really cool things. So sorry, I gotta
That's
plug all my
awesome.
students, I guess. So
No, do it. It's awesome. We'd love to give shout out University of Montana.
yeah, exactly, right, all the crazy
Yeah,
kids here. But
exactly.
yeah, no, I have a lot of grad students and they're all just fucking fantastic, so I've been really hashtag blessed, right? So
Yeah, I'm dead. Hashtag blessed. Tremendous. We love it. Welcome to the internet, ladies and gentlemen.
exactly.
No, so here's one thing, and I'm going to ask kind of a controversial question because it just popped up into my weird mind. Do you think that it is, what's the word, ethical to have a data bank? Again, let each tribe have their own,
Mhm.
but a data bank of Native American tribes that have multiple DNA samples of members of their tribe in case of like some sort of catastrophe. Like I'm not thinking of it like in a mad scientist way, but like let's say for example, everybody mixes out,
Mm.
and this is why it gets controversial, right? Everybody mixes out, or like this group of people doesn't really exist anymore,
Mm.
right? And there's like a fun like there's like a foundational like society that could raise like this future, you know,
Hmm.
descendants of these genetic samples. I know this is like a weird mad scientist question, but what is your opinion on something like that for groups of not just them, but other groups of people that are in low numbers, that have
Mhm.
faced waves of persecution across the world, whether it be Africa, the Middle East, some small European, like Aegean islands or anything like that?
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great question. I'm not sure I have an answer for it personally. I think it would be up to the groups, right? Like the individuals, the descendants that are alive that want to make that decision. Um, I'd be happy to help with such a thing, but I definitely think that a decision, no matter what it would be on their part. I also know that like culture is not genetic, right? So like individuals that might maybe not have a lot of like the background genes, can potentially maintain a culture. Now this is not to say that like you can't just like go like, oh, I'm gonna go join this culture and I'm gonna be one of them, right? Like you can't
Yeah,
really do that. But I would say that even if you as you said, like mix out, right, or you have admixture from other groups come into a population, doesn't necessarily mean that you can't maintain that culture still, like that.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So like living it, I guess, is the way to go. For those individuals that, sure, you might have some admixture with other individuals. And I don't think that that necessarily is a detriment to the culture itself. Like they can definitely still be part of it, can live it, can preserve it. I think of some of the other things that are going on. Okay, another UN plug. There's a lot of language preservation work that's done in the department by like our linguistic faculty and other students who are working really hard to try to preserve different languages from different indigenous groups here in Montana, but elsewhere too.
That's
And
got to be so hard.
oh my gosh, I can't even imagine, right? Like, dude, if I didn't like grow up speaking the languages that I do, like, I don't think I could learn one now. I just don't.
What do you got? You got English and Spanish?
Yep, English, Spanish. Yep. I don't know if I could. I like, I've tried and it just like my brain's like, nope. So, but yeah, so these people are working so hard to like be able to preserve these languages because like along with language comes a lot of other like worldview and, um, cultural aspects that like just kind of get lost without those right words, right, to describe it.
Mhm.
And so like that sort of work is so important. But some of those individuals that might be doing that sure might be not necessarily like only from that group. And I don't think it has to necessarily be that way, right? I do think that some people maybe, and might be slightly controversial, probably should have at least some. It would be really weird for me to be like, I'm going to become a native Blackfoot speaker. Not native, but like a Native American language Blackfoot speaker.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that would be weird. But cool. I'd love to learn some, definitely.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it would be necessarily like I would be the target audience for that.
Fair enough.
But
That's a fair statement to make.
yeah, but I do think, it's really an important thing and it doesn't like preclude individuals who sure might, have somewhere along in their ancestry some other group, but we're all kind of a hodgepodge mix and there's no such thing as like
It's a pure
a
thing.
pure
Yeah.
population. Yeah,
This
like
isn't dog breeding, ladies and gentlemen, okay?
strangely
Calm
enough.
down.
Yeah, we are all super mixed. And you go back far enough, we're all from Africa. And
Yeah.
even then, mixing probably with other things. And all of us have a little Neanderthal, a little Denisovan, little other stuff going on in there too.
Yeah, all that cool stuff. You
Exactly.
know, this is actually a conversation I was having. It's kind of related. I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine who's Hindu, who's Indian, and we were talking about the Rig Veda. And it's interesting because I actually want to read the whole thing, but there's like a little piece in the Rig Veda where they talk about. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering this. I am not Hindu. I do not know. But there's something going on where a bunch of people get into like some sort of conflict with like monkey-like people, and I was thinking to myself because like there's Hinduism and Judaism and Zoroastrianism are like the oldest religions that we have currently today.
Hmm.
But with Hinduism, like the oral tradition is so old. It's like, is it possible that a group of people living in the Indian subcontinent fought a war with like Homo erectus? And I just think to myself, that's me being a nerd, but I'm like, is that
I mean,
think about it. Like it could be a cool and terrifying uncanny valley situation.
no, I totally hear that. There's that. Oh God, came across this meme a couple years ago, and it sticks with me. It's like,
We love good memes.
yeah, yeah, no, totally. I'm gonna like try to like recreate it in verbally, and it's gonna not make anywhere near the same impact. But it was like the reason why the uncanny valley exists is because at some point in time, our species came across something that was looked almost human but wasn't, and it freaked us out. And they're like, we've like had this genetic memory of like, oh god, we're gonna run against something along those lines, and that's the reason why we get scared by it, or like not scared, but like wigged out.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Ah,
be surprised, honestly.
yeah.
I
So
wouldn't
who
be
knows?
surprised at all.
Yeah, and I mean, we know that we interbred with them, that
Yeah.
we had close contact with some of these individuals, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that at some point or another, someone came across another group of individuals that, yeah, that it could very well be somewhere in their language or in their oral history.
Yeah.
We
Could
came,
you
yeah,
imagine? Could you imagine how terrifying that must have been? You're
that
just
was,
some
yeah,
dude who
no,
crossed over like via Egypt through the Middle East, and you're
yeah.
in like Austria somewhere, like trying to hunt, and you see like these weird people that don't look like anything else you've ever seen. I'm like, guys, we're turning back.
Let's go
We've got
back
to
to Africa.
go. Call the police.
I imagine it definitely trips some people out. I
Just like
mean,
some Jack Neanderthal with red hair. It's like, we have to go. I am scared.
oh my god. Yeah, they're giant brow ridges.
Yeah, no,
Oh
that
my
would be
god.
so scary. I'd be
Yeah,
I'd
it
be
would
fearful
freak
for
some
my
people
life.
out.
Yeah. And then
No.
some of them decided to fuck them, which
Yes.
makes it even more concerning.
No, definitely. But okay, let's be real. Humans are weird about that sort of stuff. And like, I always think about sheep, right? People fuck sheep. Why? I don't
Oh
understand it.
no.
So
Yeah,
like,
that's
that's a
yeah,
terrible, terrible analogy there. I know, but like every time I teach my human evolution class, I'm always like, yeah,
people do very strange things.
we are weird. We are a weird
Yeah.
ass species.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine just like about people being weird? Like the people that ate different types of mushrooms. This one killed him instantly. This one made him blind, and this one tastes like chicken. We
Exactly.
figured it took us 100 years, but we figured it out.
We've got it down now.
We've got it
Exactly.
down to a science, maybe.
Maybe.
Depends how far we go from this spot.
Exactly. Exactly. And God, don't take those ones. If they turn blue, you will see God.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh my God. No, I think about that a lot. Actually, that's one of those questions I get asked all the time. Like, how do people figure out what foods are safe or not? And I was like, somebody tried it at some
Yeah.
point, and we're like, oh, we can eat this. Or like they fed it to their dog probably first.
Yeah.
But we don't have the same digestion as a dog. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Being human is rad. Just like, let's try this.
Yeah,
This kills you
exactly.
instantly. This one makes you see God.
Exactly. No, totally. There's all sorts of crazy things that we were like, "Oh, oops."
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Genetics is fun. I would like to get involved in some of that type of work at some point. I think it would be very cool
Yeah.
because I don't know. Conspiracy theories do get I love some conspiracy, like a little conspiracy theory here and there is very very fun. What do you mean you don't believe in Bigfoot? Come on.
Okay.
No, but then
You
it's
live in
like,
Montana, so help me God, everybody
yes.
does.
I done saw Bigfoot.
Ah, I was out to dinner. I was this a couple years ago, but with somebody who I would have never in a million years pegged, like another professor, as a Bigfoot
Hell yeah,
believer.
dude,
And
that
she told me her
rocks.
Bigfoot story, and I was like, Jesus fuck, are you kidding me? No, it was hilarious. I was, yep,
No, that rocks. I mean, Gigantopithecus did exist, but that was in China like 80,000 years ago. So
exactly.
unless you have like we live in some weird time travel universe.
Right, exactly. You have the standing stones like from Outlander or something like that, where there's like a portal somewhere. But
Yeah.
no, oh my god.
Damn, that would be cool though to be able to go back in time. I would just fuck with like primitive people constantly. Just leave like a sheet of aluminum foil and just see what
What-
happens.
oh my god.
A single KFC drumstick cause a war,
Oh
a
shit.
rift between two tribes.
Have you seen The Gods Must Be Crazy? Um,
No, what is that?
oh my god. when is this from? It's like from the 80s, I think. It's an like old ass movie, right? But it is where there's a guy, he's in Africa, and like something God, I don't remember all the premise. But he finds something that is like something his tribe's never seen before, and
Mhm.
he thinks it's like a relic from the gods. You totally should watch it. It's kind of exactly like what you just said, right? I think it's
Okay.
like a Coke bottle or something random like that. And
Tremendous.
it's hilarious. And yeah, it's been a real hot minute, so I'm sorry if I'm entirely misrepresenting this, but from what I remember, that is the general premise of this
What is the
controversy.
movie called again?
The gods must be crazy.
The Gods Must Be Crazy.
Oh
I'll
my
give
god, I'm
that a
gonna Google
watch.
this really quick. The
Do it.
gods. Oh, here we go. Yep, yep. And this is from 1980. Oh, look at this. I actually pulled off the right sort of decade. Um, yeah, and it is a Coke bottle. Holy shit.
Oh, amazing. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, it's a comedy.
I definitely love watching those old types of movies, especially like the way people thought people lived at that time, like Caveman with Charlton. I think Charlton Heston's in that. Planet of the Apes. All of that stuff is good, but then it goes back to what we were talking about, romanticizing everything. It's like,
Yeah.
no, it wasn't hunting and foraging. A grizzly bear lives in the forest, and you don't have bear spray. There is no like double barrel shotguns. You are going to die.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
that is horrifying, and people somehow managed to get through that to get to where we are today. And being able to build a society like the one at Paquimé or in Tenochtitlan or Jerusalem or freaking Rome when there's lions running around. There's
Yeah.
disease, there's people stabbing each other, there's famine, there's weird
Disease. Yeah.
yeah, there's disease, there's weird pestilence that leaves lesions in your skull like those people in Poland, and you're still able to be like, "You know what? Cathedral,
Exactly.
Colosseum, going up, pyramids."
Yeah, no, definitely. It wasn't aliens. It was not
Mhm.
aliens, but it was
Yeah.
definitely some people that managed to pull off some pretty incredible, crazy things that,
Mhm.
yeah, I think if I went back in the past, I'd probably just die. Some bug
Mhm.
would bite me and I would freaking
You just explode.
and I was like, oh my god. No, it'd be like, oh, now you have malaria.
Yeah.
Fuck. So,
Game over.
yeah.
Insert quarter to restart.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Or what is it like? Oh, you have dysentery and died. What is
Yeah.
the
Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail?
The
Yeah.
Oregon Trail.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Speaking of pyramids and hard labor,
Mhm.
I saw that you were doing some other research in Texas.
Ah, yes, pyramids and Harley.
Yes, because
That
it's a
that
labor.
was a segue. Yeah, I love it. Oh my
Yeah.
god. Yes, no, I've been working on a cemetery in Texas, which has been super fun. Um, yeah, so it's the Sugarland 95 is the
Such a Texas name.
yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And it's because they thought that they had 95 individuals when they first excavated this cemetery that they found kind of by accident when they were doing some other construction. And it is turns out it's from a uh post emancipation work camp where basically they just kind of like
Lovely.
grabbed guys off the street and convicted them of like jaywalking and were like, you go to jail. And then they would
Jail.
yeah, or like prison, and they would throw them in these work camps. It was terrible. I'm not like
It's not
laughing
like
about it.
funny. It's just like the concept is like how stupid people were.
Yeah, no, people were awful. Like they were just well, they're like, oh no, all the slaves got freed, so now we don't have anybody to do all the work for us. Which I'm just like, fuckity fuck. Anyhow,
Yeah.
people were awful. Mostly white dudes. Let's be real. Than that time period in the South, in Texas. Yes. Anyhow, so they basically just like had these horribly trumped up laws where they're like, oh, okay, we're going to go after these individuals. And they're like the black codes is the general term that they kind of get put under of these different weird laws that people pass that were basically ways to convict individuals because the 13th amendment that freed the slaves does have a loophole which is like if you are imprisoned we can basically make you a slave again or forced
Lovely.
labor um so it's still there. This is
Is
there's
that
they've
really
brought one.
still in there?
It's still in there. That loophole is still present in the constitution and
Remind me not to jaywalk anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not so
Which
much.
living in New York is hard to do.
Yeah, exactly. There's oh my god. But yeah, no, I think that, any sort of conviction these days can still like land you in being forced to work. And that's what they did, and they placed all these African American men for that we think are mostly men. There might actually be a couple of women in this cemetery. We're not sure. Um but what happened is that they basically worked these individuals to death. And some individuals have actually written that they say that this era, and the post emancipation era, was actually worse than slavery for certain individuals, because as slaves, these individuals were property and had value. At that point, these individuals were going to be just people that they placed in prison, and if somebody died, oh well, they didn't have any value. They just get another person.
Yeah.
And that is, I can't even like wrap my brain around how awful that is. Like, it just is so utterly insanely terrible that it just makes my head hurt.
Have you
Um,
read Thomas's have you sorry to cut you up, but have you similar concept, have you read anything by Thomas Sowell?
that name is familiar, but I'm not sure.
He's like
Mhm.
intellectual giant. To anybody listening, read or listen to some of the audiobooks that he's had done on his work. But there's this guy knows about every human cult, even the most abstract small communities from around the world. He talks about, but he has something in one of his books about the African slave trade,
Mm,
which was done by Arabs, which people for some reason like to pass over.
yeah,
And
interesting.
it
I
talks about like the Arab slave trade, which happened, pre discovery of the Americas,
mm,
and to a degree is still happening today. And it talks about like the death marches people would be sent on, how the males would all be castrated so you could always have a commodity. And it's just like if people have really always been up to like
yep.
heinous things. And so sorry, but that just reminded me of
Oh
that, and I
yeah.
wanted to interject. But please go back to Sugarland 95.
No, totally. Yeah, honestly, sometimes the more I study anthropology, the more I'm like humans are horrible. We just kind of are as a species. I kind of feel bad saying that, but also I'm kind of like, no, I've studied enough. We just do.
There's good
Oh,
and bad in
yeah,
life.
absolutely. Humans have done a lot of shit.
Yeah.
This is definitely one of them. So basically, they murdered a bunch of individuals, by working them to death, and then threw them into graves, that are unmarked, and we don't know who these individuals were. There are
And this was
still.
just a prison camp or jail
Yeah, it was just a
camp?
prison camp. Yeah, absolutely. They were being forced to work like in sugarcane, hence Sugarland, right? Like that's actually where that came from. But there was a variety of these across Texas that they were forced to work in, like cotton or in mines or in a whole bunch of other hard labor necessary jobs that they didn't want to pay people to do. So
Mhm.
they rounded people up, convicted them of these trumped up charges, and forced them to work and treated them terribly. Didn't feed them, didn't clothe them adequately, didn't take care of any sort of wounds, things like that. We see these results on their bones that were excavated then when the cemetery was originally found. So they went out and then made sure that that we were able to identify all the graves. They did some analysis on the bones, and then they reinterred everybody, but they kept a tooth back, to be able to help us to identify these individuals genetically. So I came onto this project, gosh, it's like a year and a half ago, almost 2 years, I think. God, anyhow, um, and we've been, utilizing, forensic investigative genetic genealogy, which is this method that basically is where you go in, you look at a bunch of the nuclear DNA. So you look at a bunch of single nucleotide polymorphisms or SNPs, these mutations that we know, are going to be, particularly associated with kinship. So you can then basically use those to compare against known databases of information, for the individuals have gotten their DNA sequence through like a company, right? 23andMe, Ancestry.com, Family Tree DNA, those sorts of different companies. And then from there, we're able to um, create family trees and then establish where that individual sits within their relations that we are able to find, with individuals. Like if they share more DNA, they're more closely related, less DNA, they're more further related. And we can kind of from there make this like giant family tree that helps us to then trace back to who this individual was that was buried at this work camp.
Hmm.
So
No, it's
it's
very fascinating work. I mean, so how much, how valuable this can be to so many communities around the world, not just like for a collegiate like project or research grant or anything like that, but it is very interesting. And,
totally.
like I'm sure you're familiar with the research that I don't know when this was published, but about like the Ashkenazi founding effect in Germany. I think it was in
Ah,
Worms, Germany,
mhm.
stuff like that. So it's like it's so interesting when how you can detect stuff and it like really gives clarity to like what happened to certain communities, how they diverge from others. And it's like because we have like the linguistic stuff, like for example, you have like what happened at the end of World War One, and the Armenians were obviously like massacred and displaced. So you have people that speak Armenian, you have people that speak older dialects of Armenia that live in like Lebanon or
Mm,
Jerusalem, for example, or in other parts of the world. So it's very interesting to see like how a society at first splits language, isolates, and then like genetic drift and everything. But yet it just it's super fascinating, and I wish
yeah.
people could be more appreciative of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It does have to be done right, like, in terms of, like, individuals understanding what the DNA data means. I think that's something that
Hmm.
I've run into a lot where people are like, "Oh, well, you can learn all this about me," and I'm like, "Well, not if I don't want
Yeah.
to." And, like, yeah, and, like, I
Fair.
wouldn't do it without permission, and,
Hmm.
so, like, the way that we go about doing this actually really like, I don't look at the individual's whole genomes, I really only look at specific SNPs that aren't associated with disease or, anything else, health traits and things like that that we could learn from their genomes because I don't feel like that's ethical for me to find out, like, if the family wants to learn that, cool, they can do that, but, um
And this is regarding to Sugarland 95
yeah,
or the
and then a
Native
lot of the other
American?
stuff that I do with this same
Okay.
methodology. So, like, when I do get, say, like, a cold case from the state and I'm working on their DNA, I also am like, because if I learn it about the person who's dead, I also learn it about their descendants or family who I'm going to be working with to help return this individual and give them their name back.
Have
And
you
I
found
don't
anybody or helped find anyone?
I've been working on that for a few different cases, yeah. So, it's been really a lot of fun using the same methodology. It's actually how I kinda got into this is kinda like, uh doing it for the state first of wanting to be able to utilize this method for them and then kind of realizing it had so many broader implications and the sugarland 95 because I always have worked with like really old DNA. It's actually kind of like this perfect confluence for me of like, oh, really degraded samples, methods that I already use, these two kind of come together and then we can actually do this really interesting work that it does hopefully give clarity and closure to these families. Also, educate individuals about this era. Like, not a lot of people know what happened right after, the 13th Amendment got passed and some of the atrocities that continued to occur. And it definitely is, it's just an era that kind of gets again glossed over and really I feel like needs a little bit more attention in our collective memories.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And, speaking of genetics, I actually saw something I think this morning. It's officially been like designated Brazil is the most genetically human diverse
Mm,
country in the world, which makes sense.
yeah, totally.
But it 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 brings me back to what you said earlier about and it actually correlates with something I read on a paper a few weeks ago about how North America, not just North America, but like English speaking
Mm,
colonies did not really admix while Spanish speaking Catholic countries did.
yes,
And
definitely.
so it's very interesting, like what you said, like people in Mexico, almost everybody to a degree is mixed with Native American or whatever other groups. And in English Protestant speaking, it's a cultural thing to
Mhm.
where people viewed themselves very differently. And this isn't like a political thing. This is just like a purely genetics thing. Like people didn't admix, they viewed the societies that they lived in and the people around them differently. But in Spanish speaking world, everybody's like, "Oh, you're Catholic? When's the wedding?" And so it's very very interesting because you look at Brazil, you
Mhm,
have Native Americans of numerous tribes, you have Africans, you have
mhm.
a lot of Middle Eastern people that left in the end of the Ottoman Empire due to famine. You
Mm.
have a lot of European Spanish, Portuguese, obviously Portuguese, and now like Italian and other immigrants, and Chinese immigrants. So it's very, very interesting. Everyone's just like conglomerating and like eating Brazilian barbecue, which honestly is not a bad way to
No,
enjoy.
not a bad way to live at
No,
all. No,
no.
definitely.
Some
Oh
good
my god.
music, some tasty food, a trip through the Amazon. Not not a bad, maybe avoid the favelas, but not a bad not a bad way to live, you know. It's like everybody suffered to come here and we're chilling, we're on the beach. Where's Festival? Giselle, where are you? Come
Right?
back. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I was trying to remember her name. I was like, "What's her name? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that lady." Yeah, but no, totally. Oh my god, yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's a way that we're headed, right? And like worldwide, where we're going to see so
Mhm.
much more admixture over the years. And we're kind of already seeing it. Like I feel like a lot of the weird like keep it separated in terms of populations in North America has been shifting lately. Um, it's got some time to catch up to like the rest of the world, but I do think that that has been going on. But yeah, like I think that the Spanish particularly and the Portuguese when they got over into the New World, it had a very different strategy in terms of how to go about dealing or working with the population that was here. Some of it wasn't
Yeah.
great, but definitely a
Yeah.
lot of it did lead to a lot of admixture.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's weird because like you can look at it both ways. It's like I think, people around the world, it's new, because we're so interconnected. But also I think in a way you kind of lose the uniqueness of everything, which is maybe like an arcade. Like I wouldn't want to go to a Japan where there's like no more Japanese people.
Right, right, yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's like so it's there's the negatives and the positives, and I guess you just have to like look at it from both ends. And I'm not telling anyone how to think. I don't think any of us are doing that. But I think
Nope, not at
like
all. Definitely,
yeah, it's
everybody's
just like
allowed. Yeah,
it's just interesting to see, how the world really does change and demographic changes over time. Like we could look at any Middle Eastern conflict. It's like, you stupid assholes. You are all the same exact thing that believe in different things. Why are you fighting? Shut up. I can say this. My family is from that part of the world. Like, shut up. Why fighting? 1400 years fighting. Why? We're all the same. We all look identical. Just some of you decided to believe some other guy and some of you decided to live on this hill. What difference does it make? Shut up. Who cares who invented falafel? We all like it. Stop fighting. This is annoying. You're ruining it for everyone.
yeah. I entirely understand what you
Yeah.
mean, and yeah, no, I don't understand a lot of the conflicts the humans have. I'm like, shit, we're all related. The far enough back you go, we're all descended from the same mitochondrial
Yeah.
lineage. Like
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
don't get it. I really don't.
Like
But
the
yeah.
like when the Spanish came to destroy Tenochtitlan and turn it to Mexico City, they couldn't have done it if the Maya treated the other native tribes so poorly. Like the Spanish came to them, they're like, "Do you like them?" They're like, "No, they treat us like crap. We'll help you overthrow them." And that's basically what happened.
Yeah, no, it
That,
was the
that
Aztec, but yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Aztec or
Yeah,
my
in that part of
Aztec.
Mexico,
Yeah,
yeah, because the Maya are down in the Yucatan, but yes, absolutely, they were like, "No, we're gonna
yeah,
help because we don't like these other people."
yeah,
And then just yeah, no, it was oh god. No, definitely.
yeah. Exactly. Very interesting stuff. Doctor Snow, I have one last question for you.
Go for it, absolutely.
Even if it is not related to anthropology and genetics. And by the way, would love to have you back on. Love this is a tremendous conversation. It's been awesome.
This has been so much fun.
It's been a lot of fun. My question to you is what are some things, whether related or not, that have you curious? What are some things you're excited about in the field or not in this field? What are some things that you want to plug? Anything at the end to finish the show?
I don't know, the first thing that comes to mind, I was reading this morning of, like, they found a copy of the Magna Carta at Harvard, and I don't know, it's been on my brain this morning. They thought it was fake. It's not. It's one of like the 7 original copies. I was like, "What?"
That's
Anyhow,
awesome. Where
oh,
where did they find this?
they found it in their library. They apparently somebody bought it and added it to their collections. They said they bought it for 27.50 back right after World War II, and they thought it was a fake. And then they tested it and they're like, "Oh
Of the
shit,
Magna Carta.
Magna Carta." I was like, "What?" Anyhow,
Why
I
can't
read
I
about that.
find anything like there's so many thrift stores here. What I don't want used cat t-shirts or hunting garb pants. I get it, it's in style, even though the people here have never gone hunting. They don't know what a rifle or a deer is. But why can't I find like a precious jewel or artifact? And it's like that would look nice, and then it's worth $100,000. And I'm like,
Exactly. Yeah. No, I definitely hear that. I was like, "Oh, that's cool. Good for y'all."
yeah,
But no, totally had me like this morning just kind of geeking out massively on that. Other things that I think are really awesome right now are some of the new sequencing methodologies that are coming out. As someone who works with shitty DNA, I do find those to be super cool, and I'm just loving all the new stuff that's getting better and better as we move forward. And also, I really am enjoying something that has been happening in the field for the last, I don't know, honestly, since about 2020, things got really heated in the field of like ancient DNA, but also in like working with human DNA just in general about like a lot of the
why?
ethics of like in terms of dealing with like indigenous populations and then also like how to go about doing this better. And I just
Mhm.
honestly have been finding that really um gratifying, I guess, in a weird sort of way, like in the sense of like, oh yeah, like there's a lot to this. It's really opened up my mind a lot, and I've really enjoyed learning about it and trying to make sure you're doing the right thing. I do think some people get really fucking white knighty on certain things, and that pisses me off. Like, but I think that there's a lot of ways to go about doing this sort of work that builds instead of destroys and helps people in a way that they want to be helped. So I do find that to be really cool. There's a lot of cool stuff going on just everywhere. Yeah, I love to nerd out on stuff. So yeah.
It's the best.
It is.
Dr. Snow, again, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. This has been a really fun episode. I can't wait to do this again. Thank you.
Thank
Congrats to all
you.
your grad students. Shout out University of Montana, Go Grizz, best university in the country. I'm not being paid, but
Me either, but yes, I agree entirely.
thank you everyone.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.